Sure. Where should I stand?
Well,
we stand there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to have my back there.
State your name and address for the record, Aaron.
You swear me in?
No, in your comments, if you've got the 5 minutes.
I guess. So anyway, my name is Peter Schiff, and I'm here tonight because I'm a candidate for the Senate as a Republican. So I thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to address your council. Let me give you a little bit about my background so you know who I am. I mean, I was actually born here in Connecticut. I was born in New Haven. But my parents got divorced when I was young, and my mom moved us out of the state. We lived in Manhattan for a while. We lived down in Florida. And ultimately, she moved us out to California, where I remained for most of my life. I came back to Connecticut in 2004. But I went to college out on the West Coast. I went to UC Berkeley. I majored in business and accounting. But I was very active in politics early on. You know, I was a big Reagan. I had a life-size poster of Ronald Reagan in my dorm room, which didn't make me too popular in Berkeley. But and although I became pretty disillusioned with politics as I got older, because most of the Republicans that I was supporting would disappoint me once they took office. I got into the investment business after college. I started working at a major brokerage firm that recently went bankrupt, and well, I worked there for a couple of years and didn't really like it. I just didn't think that the retail investor was getting a fair shake. I thought that that the firms were really run for the benefit of their institutional clients, and I thought in many cases the individuals were being used as a way for Wall Street to move stocks out of inventory and out of the hands of institutions to the hands of individuals, and they were just not getting a fair deal. And I was a retail broker, so I didn't want to do that. So I went off on my own and I started working basically out of my one-bedroom apartment in downtown LA. And ultimately, I moved out of there and I got a partner. We opened up an office on Wilshire Boulevard, and I began to start my company. And initially, when I was calling people, I didn't have any clients, so I had a cold call. And the first thing I really started to do that I really felt passionate about was I saw a bubble in the stock market, in the technology sector, particularly in the internet stocks. And I was calling people, I was working 10, 12 hours a day, cold calling people. I was buying leads in 1998, 1999, 2000, trying to get people to sell their tech stocks, trying to get people to sell their internet stocks. I was warning that it was a bubble, that they were going to crash. And there were people who listened to me, and I got them out of their stocks, and I put them into sound investments. I put them into basic industry. I put them into oil and gas companies, natural resource companies, industrial companies. I invested a lot in property trusts and utilities. And basically, when the NASDAQ bubble burst, I got a lot of credibility. A lot of people who I had saved a lot of money became good clients, and I had a long list of people who I had warned to get out, who didn't, but I was able to call them up again. And hey, I remember me. I'm the guy that tried to get you out of your internet stocks. And so I was able to really start to build up my business that way. And I started as a one-man guy, and now I have 6 offices. I have over 100 employees between investment advisors and operational support people, compliance people. And the other thing that really helped me, get a group of clients and kind of get well known is after the internet bubble burst, and I saw the way the government was interfering in the economy. I saw that Alan Greenspan irresponsibly slashed interest rates down to 1%. I saw the deficits that initially began to be run up under Bush, and I saw the things that Bush was encouraging us to do, go out there and buy new cars, get into debt. I saw a problem, and when I saw what was happening to housing prices in 2002, 2003, 2004, I began warning about a housing bubble and the fact that it was going to burst eventually, and it was going to bankrupt our financial institutions. I knew that everything the government had done in the aftermath of the bursting of the dot-com bubble was wrong, that we should have had a much deeper recession. We needed that recession to cure the economy of all the imbalances that had been built up during that internet boom that I recognized in advance. And I knew the government was making a mistake, and I knew that there was going to be a bigger problem down the line. So I began to warn my clients that this was going to be a disaster, and I started really recommending that they buy gold, they buy commodities, they get out of the dollar, they buy foreign stocks, I became so worried about it that I actually wrote a book. Initially, I was going to write a book about just the real estate market. I was going to title it, The American Nightmare, and it was all going to be about how the real estate market was going to collapse and how it was going to destroy the our financial sector, and how it was going to send us into this terrible recession. But I decided to condense that into one chapter, and I wrote a more expansive book called Crash Proof: How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse. That book came out in February of '07, although it was largely written in between late '05 and early '06. It takes about 9 months between the time you actually finish the book and the time it comes out. Also during that time, I was going on a lot of financial shows. I started in 2005. I became a regular on CNBC. I was on a couple times a week. I was on Fox News. I was on Bloomberg. I was on CNN. And I was just warning. I was talking about what was going on, the reckless policies in Washington and how they were undermining the free market, how they had blown up this financial bubble in real estate, how it was going to collapse. I was warning that financial institutions were going to fail. I predicted that General Motors would go bankrupt years ago. I predicted that Fannie and Freddie would go bankrupt. I knew all this was going to happen because I understood how government policy was screwing up the free market and creating these problems. And people gave me a nickname on CNBC. They started calling me Dr. Doom. And a lot of other commentators would, make fun of me and, ridicule me because they didn't see this. They thought everything was great. They were very optimistic. Everything was fantastic. The economy was going great. And they didn't understand the real problem. They didn't understand that we had a phony recovery in those years from 2002 to 2007, that the economy wasn't improving. We just went on a gigantic spending binge. We took all that cheap money from Washington, and Wall Street speculated with it. Americans spent it. We bought all sorts of things we couldn't afford, and that's all we did. And we counted all the money we spent as economic growth, and we ignored all the debt that we accumulated in the process. And we ignored the fact that beneath the surface, the real economy was disintegrating. We were losing our manufacturing base. Our real industrial production, our capital investment, our real output was stagnating or shrinking, and all we were doing was spending borrowed money. And when the collapse finally hit, mid-2007 or mid-2008, then a lot of the predictions that I made came true. And when that happened, I got some type of notoriety on the internet. A lot of people started to follow me. There was somebody put up a video they called Peter Schiff Was Right, which went over a lot of my predictions. About 1.6 million people have seen it so far on YouTube. And a lot of people just started, my book sold over 200,000 copies, Crash Proof, and so a lot more people started, to give me some credit because for so many years I was a lone voice. I was kind of like an economic Paul Revere warning that there was this financial crisis coming, except, nobody listened to me. And so I got some credit initially when a lot of these forecasts came true. And what happened was I kind of developed a pretty good following among younger people. Initially, when I was going on television, when I was writing books, warning about the financial crisis, it was mainly because I was looking for clients for my brokerage firm. Because what I was saying is, hey, there's a crisis coming, I can protect you. I can protect your wealth, I can keep your retirement fund safe by getting them out of harm's way. But in the process, when I was going on television and talking about free market principles and the Constitution and all these things, I developed a following of a lot of young people. And a lot of those young people, about a year ago, put up a website to try to draft me to run for the United States Senate. And a lot of people just donated to that website. I had nothing to do with it. They raised some money. And I got a lot of emails. I would get a lot of letters. Every time I spoke someplace in front of an audience, all the questions would come up. Are you going to run for U.S. Senate? I would run for U.S. Senate. And there was a real movement that went on for about a year to get me to run. And I think one of the main, what really got people excited about the race was the potential of me running against Chris Dodd. Because of Chris Dodd's unique position as being the chairman of the Finance Committee, he was on television proclaiming how sound Fannie and Freddie were. The same day I was on another channel saying they were bankrupt and they were going to have to get bailed out by the government. Of course, I was opposed to the government bailout. I wanted to let Fannie and Freddie